and my grandparents in a 2-bedroom tenement. My mother and I and my sister shared one of those bedrooms and a set of bunk beds. So you go from the top bunk to the bottom bunk to the floor every third night on the floor. I went to big and broken, overcrowded, under-resourced, and sometimes violent public schools. But we had a community. Because that was a time when every child was under the jurisdiction of every single adult on the block. So if you messed up down the street in front of Ms. Jones, she would straighten you out as if you were hers, and then call home. So you get it 2 times. I first came to Massachusetts in 1970 when I was 14 years old, on a scholarship through a program called A Better Chance to Go to Milton Academy. 1970, in the town of Milton, Massachusetts, where, by the way, I live today, and have for the last 22 years and raised my family in a house that was on my old paper route when I was a student at Milton Academy. But in 1970, there weren't many people like me in Milton. And I can remember, this is 1970. You have to take yourself back. I had hair out to here. It's funny now, but it was cool then. And I didn't sound like, I didn't speak like, I didn't look like neighbors around the town of Milton. And there were only a handful of people of color on the campus at all. Now on the campus, the faculty and the adults and the families of many of the students were trying very hard to make that community work and welcoming to me and people like me. But we used to take walks up Randolph Avenue to what was then the Curtis Compact. Today it's the Tedeschi's. And not one trip were we not stopped by the police and pulled over. Sometimes with the lights flashing. I'm just walking. But the blue lights flashing, and then the police officer would get out and come over and ask me what I was doing in the town of Milton. And I'd have to produce my identification. I can tell you it gave me some pride when they finally started to issue Milton Academy student IDs to be able to show my identification card. But I knew what was behind that. I understood that I had come from a place where violence and poverty and stress of a whole host of kinds was familiar. But I also knew that that was not who I was. That did not define me. And so I carried around this extraordinary mix of feelings and frustration about being associated with something because I looked like an image of what that police officer carried around. And it weighed on my heart for a long time. In that small way, maybe insignificant way, I understand what you and so many of you in the Muslim community in America have been experiencing since the tragedies of September 11th. And it has struck me for a long time now how we don't separate well enough the peaceful teachings of Islam from the violence that was brought upon us by those who attacked us on September 11th. I lived in Sudan and around in other parts of Africa for about a year after I graduated law school. I learned to speak the language. I read. I studied. I understood Islam. I was around those who practiced Islam. And I was touched by two things. The constant emphasis on peace and kindness that was a part of the teaching of the Islam I was exposed to. And the extraordinary... And I was also struck by the extraordinary similarity in so many of those lessons to what I learned growing up as a Christian on the south side of Chicago. There are certain... So we have a cheering squad in front. You are beautiful, darling. There are certain lessons that transcend one faith, that bind us as members of humankind. And one of the things that distinguishes this extraordinary country of ours is this idea of religious freedom. It was at the center of our founding. It was the reason we were organized. But religious freedom is impossible without religious tolerance. If we are to be a successful community of diversity, then we must find ways to build bridges across to each other. And so I want to be clear. I am not here in a political capacity. And I'm not just saying that because Bilal was nervous about the... He's still nervous. He's moving. I'm not saying that just because Bilal was clearly nervous about the 501c3 status of some of the comments. Let me be clear, I would be honored to have your support. Whatever you do, support someone. Vote for someone.
He will support you.
Well, I appreciate that. But my point, I appreciate that. Shukran. But my point goes beyond politics. My point is, if we are to have a successful democracy that affirms our best values, including religious freedom, then it will take everyone finding common cause and contributing to the success of that democracy. And so my point was simply that I am not here simply to ask for a vote. I'm here to invite you to see your stake in your own civic and political future. And to tell you as your governor that I see you, that I welcome you, that I honor you, that I acknowledge you, and that I want you to be central to building a better and stronger Commonwealth for all of us. Thank you so much for having me.